The Catholic Man Show contains high levels of manliness. If you think you may be too weak to withstand the manliness represented in the following program, please do yourself a favor and stop listening now. If you choose to continue in spite of this warning, if at any time you feel yourself overcome by the manliness, stop immediately and consult your closest medical professional. And now, for the not-so-fair, faint, or frilly, we present The Catholic Man Show.
Welcome to The Catholic Man Show. We are on the Lord's team, the winning side, so raise your glass. I'm Adam Minahan, sitting here today with my co-host David Niles, and we are not in the studio today. We are actually about 60 miles north of Tulsa, Oklahoma, in a town called Bartlesville at St. John's Catholic Church. Dave?
Yes.
Are you excited?
I'm pumped.
This is a different episode because we are actually going to be recording in front...
Also, wait.
Okay.
I like to use the full name of this church because I think it's awesome. And
thank you.
Most people, I just don't hear a lot of people do it. St. John outside the Latin Gate?
No.
In front of the Latin Gate?
No.
What is it?
St. John before the Latin Gate.
Before the Latin Gate.
Before the Latin Gate.
There's a preposition of some kind.
There you go.
I feel like I did better than most people.
I would give you...
A little bit of credit? No?
No,
Okay.
I don't think I'd give you any. We are...
Wallowing in my humility.
We are in front of about 60 men who have dedicated today on a Saturday, away from their family, away from all the busy day that they probably had, to join together in a men's conference to grow closer to our Lord. And so we're excited to be here. We actually have a guest for the show as well. Dave, I'll let you introduce him.
Okay, this is Father Pratt. You guys all know him. So also, you are our first live audience to record a show in front of. So we're very excited. This is a first for us.
Yeah.
As well. All right. Father Pratt?
Yes, hello. Happy to be Father Michael Pratt. Delighted to be here.
That soundbite of the applause went really well.
I know.
Yeah.
We didn't even practice that. That was awesome. But Father Pratt, you're the pastor here in Bartlesville.
Yes, I've been here 3 years now and love most days here.
Most days. Okay.
Just kidding.
pretty-
I do love it here.
So if this is your first time listening to the Catholic Man Show, we do 3 things every episode. Dave, I'll let you tell them what the 3 things are.
Okay, the first thing that we do is we open, review, and enjoy a manly beverage, which we will do right away. The second thing we do is highlight a man gear of some kind. This is something that every Catholic man should use just because it's manly and awesome. And the third thing is we have the most manly conversation you've ever heard in your life.
That's what some people say.
Not everybody can handle, as the warning stated.
That's why we have a warning.
I enjoyed the look on your faces as you listened to our warning. That's for legal reasons, okay?
Yeah. You can't sue us.
Because, seriously, it could be harmful to your health if you are susceptible to high levels of manliness. We had a guy actually, this report was confirmed, he actually died after listening to our show. He died to self and, went home and, was served his family just really well. He just really dove deep into manhood afterwards, so be careful. I'm just saying. I'm ready to get into the drink.
Okay, let's do it. Our drink of this afternoon is called White Horse. It's a blended Scotch whiskey. We are drinking it in our Catholic Man Show Glencairn glasses. If you guys would look, this is our Catholic Man Show Glencairn glasses.
They're very fancy.
They're very fancy. It's actually kind of scientific on why they made them the way they did, but it's made to you swirl the whiskey around and all the ethanol goes out of the glass before you smell the whiskey, which gives you the opportunity to smell the tasting note, all the complex smells of the whiskey before tasting it. So we'll cheers and then we'll talk about it.
Okay.
So we're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
Okay, so is this bottoms up or is this just a
No. We drink in moderation here. We drink in moderation. So this is not a bottoms up. This is a slow sipping whiskey that we'll sip throughout the show.
Glad we clarified that.
Yeah.
Cheers to Jesus.
Cheers to Jesus.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers.
So if you'll notice, this is a
10 bar went bottoms up, by the way.
So if you guys will notice, this is it's a blended whiskey. So there's
the first blended Scotch we've had on the show, I believe.
No.
What else did we do?
We did one just the other. Oh, actually, yes, you're right. It was a blended bourbon that we did.
Yeah,
but
that
not
was
a blended
bourbon.
Yeah,
This is
you're
Scotch.
correct. So this is it has 40 different 40 different Scotches blended together. The main one
40?
is 40 different ones. Yes.
Wow. That's more than
the
Dr.
main
Pepper.
ones. The main ones are Lagavulin, which is Islay, and they do their own whiskey, which is delicious.
Lagavulin is fantastic. If you guys are whiskey drinkers, give that one a shot. It's awesome.
And that's what gives it kind of the honey nodes at the beginning. If you tasted it, it gives you a little bit of a honey, a sweetness to it. And then it also has what's called Kulila, which is a Scotch that we've had on the show as well at the beginning of our shows. But it's called Kulila, and that gives more of the peatiness, the smokiness at the end. It has a long finish at the very end. So if you notice, it kind of has this smoky peatiness to it that is the finish. What are your thoughts, guys?
Well, one of the reasons we picked this is because it's very affordable. And
That's true.
It tastes affordable. Just kidding.
Well,
This is
$30.
It's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
White Horse has been around for a long, long time. In fact, people here, their granddads probably had this in their liquor cabinet.
So this is $30 for a handle. So not just a bottle. You get a whole handle for $30.
And so a lot of the single malt whiskeys are a lot more complex. There's a lot more flavors. There's a lot more going on in the single malt whiskeys. This is a blended whiskey, so it's not as complex, but it's easy to drink. And because it's affordable where everybody can have some, this is a great whiskey to have if you have a men's group, Bible study night or something like that, and you want to do a whiskey tasting. This would be a perfect one to have that's not complex, that's not over in your face, but it's nice to sip on.
Yeah, it's got some of the smoky notes that a lot of the more sophisticated whiskey drinkers like, and I pretend to be one of those. And it's also very drinkable. So
you pretend and play one on the radio.
That's right. Yeah, not TV yet.
Not
Someday.
TV.
Someday I'll be there. But anyway, even a new whiskey drinker I think would like this. You guys can all form your own opinion on that. But it's very smooth. It's easy to drink, and it doesn't break the bank, which is all win-wins across the board. I keep this one at home myself because sometimes, you just want to sit down at the end of the day and have a glass of whiskey. You're not like wanting to sit down and make a big deal out about, have a nice expensive glass. You just want to have a glass of whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. Like chill out at the end of the day. This is a good one for at the end of the day when you're mentally exhausted and you have a nice Scotch that's maybe a $50, $70 bottle of Scotch that you don't want to have because you're kind of mentally drained. You can't appreciate it at that time. This would be the one to kind of sip on.
What do you think, Padre? What are your thoughts?
I was thinking about my good buddy Father Chris Donnelly in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We were in seminary together. Every so often, probably maybe once a month or so, one of us will have a day, and it just was tough and long and exhausting. And you just, kind of like you just said, Adam, like you just really could use a drink. So, but we know that it's not wise for a priest or for anybody to really drink alone. So he will text or I will text and say, all right, talktail tonight. We call it a talktail. I know it's maybe not the most manly name out there.
I appreciate the pun.
Yeah. So around, when the day is done, we'll call each other and we'll each pour a drink and we'll talk about what's going on, what's happening. I complain about the parish. All sorts of good stuff. But then this would be a great whiskey to have. Like I could tell him to pick it up. That way he won't have to steal wine out of the sacristy. Just kidding. Or am I? So
the laborer deserves his payment.
Anyway, this would be a great whiskey for us to kind of talk to and talk
it's great
about.
For I get the idea of like a fireside whiskey.
Yeah.
You have a cigar in your hand and you want a whiskey and you're by a fireside. You have a bunch of men gathered around. You guys are going to be opening up the Bible or talking about life in general. This would be a good whiskey to go to, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you get a whole handle of it so it lasts longer.
That's right.
Ice or no ice?
Ice or
Okay, good question.
Good question.
Great question. We had a guy ask ice or no ice. So we're drinking it what's called neat, which is without ice. typically what you can do is you try it without ice first, and you drink it neat, and then you add a few drops of water into it, and it actually changes the complexity of the whiskey. And so you get a different flavor because the water changes it.
Yeah, I encourage you to try that, and not a pour. Don't pour water into it. Literally, if you have a dropper,
a dropper
for something this size, put 2 or 3 drops of water and taste it again. It'll blow your mind how much the flavor will actually change. Some whiskeys are sweeter before you add water. Some will open up a whole new thing about the whiskey by just a drop of water. And so if you have one of those at home and you're drinking a whiskey and you want to just, see what it does, give it a try, because it's impressive, the difference that it'll really make. But I want to make sure that we talk about, why are we drinking on the air? Why are we doing that?
Especially because I have mass in 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons we just have a couple minutes before the break. God made the things of this earth good, okay? And he made them to be enjoyed for their goodness. So we shouldn't be afraid to enjoy God's creation the way he intended it to. Now, of course, that means we should always enjoy it in moderation. And moderation is going to be different, especially when it comes to alcohol. It's going to be different for everybody. For some people, moderation means none. Okay, and that's something we have to know about ourselves. So it's a manly thing to know yourself.
Yep.
And by practicing that virtue, we all become more manly.
So when we get back, we're going to jump into the man gear. I'm Adam Minhan, sitting here with David Niles and our special guest, Father Michael Pratt, here in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. We're on the Lord's team,
the winning side.
So raise your glass.
Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I'm David Niles, here with Adam Minahan, Father Michael Pratt. We are recording our first live audience episode in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Is this the home of Phillips 66?
Yes, it is.
Is this the home? I mean,
I think a lot of people have
a very strong association, I think. Anyway, we're drinking White Horse, which is primarily a product of Lagavulin, except it's a lot cheaper than Lagavulin.
Yes.
What did you guys think about it? What was your opinion? Thumbs up, thumbs down? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Because it doesn't matter what the whiskey, how good, it's highly rated. There's going to be some people out there who just don't like it, even if they're whiskey drinking people. So everybody has their own opinions.
It's very similar with homilies.
Very similar. Ooh, yeah.
I don't say so myself.
Yeah. Do you think that you deliver the Lagavulin of homilies?
No.
Or the Lefroig?
No.
Okay.
Keep going.
Dave, before we get into the man gear, we got to do a little housekeeping real quick.
I hate housekeeping.
I know, but we need to do it because we just launched our new website.
Oh, yeah.
The Catholic. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I forgot we did that.
Yeah. You can see who did it. TheCatholicManShow.com.
I was very involved.
Yeah, it was very involved. TheCatholicManShow.com is where you want to go. We just launched it. It has all of our blogs, all of our podcasts. It's pretty cool. We actually have a new segment. We have Friends of the Show, which are people who donate monthly to our show to help support us. And in return, we give them a Glencairn glass and a lot of exclusive content. But we actually renamed that.
We've rebranded the Friends of the Show. It's now the Council of Man.
The Council of Man. And we have bylaws.
We do have bylaws.
And
there are rules.
Yep. And
we have the council.
We have a special section on our website that is for specifically the Council of Man. They have logins and passwords where they get to go in and they can see all of our exclusive content that we've done. And then also we'll have live webinars on there as well.
So if you'd like to support the show and join, be on a member of the Council of Man, be on the council, then go to thecatholicmanshow.com and you can sign up. If you donate $10 a month to help support us as a thank you, we will send you one of our Glencairn glasses. You'll also get access to the private content that we produce just for that group. We try to do at least one a month. You also get access to the private Facebook page.
That's right.
Where many cool things happen.
That's right.
So anyway.
Let's
move on. Let's get into the man gear.
Let's get into the man gear.
So I like this one.
I'll let you introduce it.
It's a very manly thing because it's basically a rock. It's a sharpening stone.
That's right.
And you know what? We were just talking about Peter.
Yes.
And he's a rock.
Mm-hmm. Peter's name means
rock. Kefa.
Rock.
Yes.
Not little rock. Some people
Are we gonna
say
get into
that, and they're wrong.
Petra? Is that what we're gonna get into?
Yeah.
No, let's not get into that.
We won't do it. But
No.
there are people who say that.
People.
holler if you're from Team Peter.
All right.
We divide up into 3 teams today. Team Peter, Team Judas Maccabeus. And the winner of all the competitions today, Team Abraham.
All right. I was
Very
on
nice.
Team Abraham.
I was too. I was an honorary member.
Okay.
They had me on.
Did you get approval for that?
I didn't.
Are you espousing heresy on the Catholic Man Show?
So okay, let's talk about the sharpening stone.
Do you have your knife on you? Let me have it. I want to sharpen it
Okay.
while we're doing this.
No, Juan Posada has it.
Juan?
So
he comes.
we brought a whetstone here today, and it's actually given to us by a Knights of Columbus member, 4th degree knight, John Rost, who owns Retool in Broken Arrow.
Thank you,
and
sir.
he gave this to us, and he actually talked to me about how to sharpen it. This is actually, Dave, you actually can't do that with this one.
There you go. No, that's not a knife. No, that's a knife.
Dave, you actually can't do it right now because we don't have oil. So what you do is you
this
pour a
is
little
one
bit
of
of
those.
yeah, you put
Okay.
pour a little oil on there, and then start sharpening it because the oil, all the particles that you sharpen, it rises on the oil. So anyway,
That's a sweet knife, though. Thanks for bringing that up. I love that you just have that on you.
Russell, what else do you have on you?
It's awesome.
So we have 3 of these that we'll leave for anybody who wants them today, given to us by, like I said, Mr. John Rost from
At Retool in Tulsa.
and Broken Arrow.
He sells used tools, right?
That's correct.
He
Retool,
them.
right?
Yeah.
You got it. It's
So
logical.
it's a cool store. Yes, if you guys if you're in Tulsa and you want to go to a cool tool store, that's where you should go.
That's where you should go.
Because it's also cheaper than new tools.
Mm-hmm. I also like the sharpening
Do you
stone.
know where is this store?
61st and Garnett.
Boom.
I also like the sharpening stone because it has some good symbolism with men. You know, in Proverbs we're talking about iron sharpens iron. Even though this is sharpening stone, we kind of relate that men come together to help each other, to sharpen each other, to grow together, to hold each other accountable, to make sure that they're pushing each other. That's how Dave and I went from being Catholic to love being Catholic.
Dude, I feel like I'm having to hold you accountable all the time.
You do.
Like,
You do.
It's a full-time job.
Tell me, my wife tells me that all the time.
One of these days, you're gonna just stop sinning, and my life will be a lot better.
Yes, mine too.
But you know, we're also talking about virtue today. That's the subject of today's show. And Father Pratt, we were talking the other day on the phone about virtue sharpening the mind, so to speak. Didn't
You
we
guys
say-
see that? Do you see the dots that we're connecting here? We're
Right,
bleeding
so-
into the topic.
So if man is a knife, it is his virtue that keeps him sharp and effective.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I'm glad I'm good.
Where'd you get that?
So I'm telling you, like, I've got resources and I know people.
It was Father Brian O'Brien.
Oh, Father Brian O'Brien. For the record, my mom thinks I should be Father Brian O'Brien. About once a week, she says, "Gosh, you should be on social media like him. He's so wonderful." Father Brian has a smartphone. Why don't you get one, Mikey?
You know, he does listen to the show. He's going to hear you say
He's
that.
awesome.
Yeah.
He's awesome.
He is awesome.
Yep.
But the sharpening stone, for those people and our listeners who have never used one, you should YouTube how to use it. Don't just go like get a knife and start
Yeah,
whacking it with the stone and
You really mess
you
things
want to
up.
like do it right. Otherwise, you'll ruin your stuff, and it's not good. And that's the opposite of virtue. Virtue is not supposed to ruin things.
Well, and so the reason why the sharpening stones have been forever since.
At least since knives have been around, as far as I know.
Men. The reason why men like to have tools, and to have tools, you have to make sure that they're usable. And so ever since, I don't know, the dawn of time, when men were using tools to put together things, they had to make sure that their tools were used correctly and used the way they were supposed to be made, which sometimes you need to sharpen them, or sometimes you need to make, I don't know, you have to make sure that they're put together correctly.
You know what? This may be like a chicken and egg thing. Did the knife come first, or did the sharpening stone come first? Because
that's true.
If the knife came first, with what did they use to sharpen it? How did they get it sharp in the first place? You know what I'm saying? I'll bet the sharpening stone came
we get
first.
we get really deep philosophically here on the Catholic Man Show.
I'm going to take another drink.
I think we're onto something, though.
Yeah, I do too. Go ahead. Keep expounding on this.
I think there's a book here. We could write a book. The sharpening stone and the knife.
But your comment about the maintenance of things, especially your tools, we experience this with our cars. If you don't take care of your car, good luck. It's going to last not very long at all. I mean, part of the percentage of the time in your car has to be spent with changing the oil, getting the tires rotated, gas, etc. The same is, your analogy about the spiritual life, the same is true. It applies to us. Sometime, yes, we're out there working. Yes, we're out there talking. We're out there doing the Lord's work. But there is some serious time that needs to be spent on the mechanics of things, which is one of the benefits of these retreats. Is we're away from things. We can take some time to think. We can take some time to sharpen, to learn, to sort of team build a little bit, learn about these biblical characters, Judas, Maccabeus, Abraham, and Peter, for today's example, all with the mind of upkeep of our person.
That's true. You know, right before we started the show, Father Pratt, you were talking about confession. And confession could actually be like an analogy to
totally.
the sharpening stone. And how you have to stay close to confession. If you're not staying close to confession, then you are wrong.
Yeah. And there's a lot of tools that when you're using them, like let's say you have a tool that you're using with a lathe. Often, depending on the kind of wood you're working with, they need frequent sharpening. You might use them for 5 minutes, and then you have to go sharpen them again. And then you come back and use them for 5 minutes. And it's like almost a constant sharpening process while you're using them. And at least that's how confession is for me. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Not 5 minutes.
I typically make it about 5 minutes, and then it's like, all right, getting dull already.
But it is important to continue having a frequent confession and making sure that it's on a schedule. Taking your family needs to see you taking them to confession, because that is sharpening your faith, making sure that you're gearing back to the faith. And so they need to see not only that it's important to you and that it needs to be on your calendar, but they need to see you go first. They need to see Dad is the one that's setting the example to walk in there and say, I have wronged, but I'm here to ask for forgiveness.
Yeah.
Maybe you've talked about it before. There's some crazy statistic that if the mother is practicing her faith but not the father, like 20% of the children or something go to end up practicing the faith. But if the father practices the faith, then it's like 85% chance the kids will practice it. I was not the exact percentages, but it was something
they're very
wildly
close, that's
apart like that.
Roughly what I was guessing, because I've heard that before.
Yep. Well, when we get back, we're going to dive into virtue. We're on the Lord's team,
The winning side.
so raise your glass.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. We are on the Lord's team, the winning side, so raise your glass. I hope that the break was as manly for you as it was for us. Sitting here at Bartlesville at St. John's.
Before the Latin Gate.
Before the Latin
Before.
St. John before the Latin Gate.
Now, is that before spatially or chronologically?
Spatially.
Thank you.
Would you like to hear the story real quick?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, I'm glad you asked.
Softball.
When So around the year 95 AD, John was the last surviving of the 12 apostles. And he was captured by the Emperor Domitian, the Roman emperor, brought to Rome, and they were going to make a public spectacle out of his execution. And what they wanted to do was send a message. This is one of the last remaining people on earth that knew Jesus personally. You want to follow him, this is what's going to happen to you. They took him outside the city of Rome, which is what they usually did for executions, near the Latin Gate. There was a wall that went around the city of ancient Rome, and one of the gates was called the Porta Latina. This happened just before it. They took a big pot of boiling oil, and they threw John inside, only he didn't die. The intent was to boil him alive in front of thousands of people. Many were there witnessing. He didn't die. In fact, he joked when he came out and said that I feel actually more refreshed than when I went in. Thank you very much. The emperor was not used to getting his way. He was furious. He said, put this man on an island somewhere else and get him out of my sight. Let's never deal with him ever again. So they put him on the island called Patmos, and eventually John went on to write the book of Revelation and die a natural death, the only one of the 12 apostles to die a natural death. Fast forward 300 years or so-ish, and when Constantine legalized Christianity, they began building churches on top of all these holy sites associated with Jesus' life or with the apostles. So the Holy Sepulchre in Rome or in Jerusalem, the spot where he was crucified, that got a church. St. Peter's tomb, we talked about that, Team Peter today. A church was built on top of St. Peter's tomb. One was built on the site to commemorate the spot where John survived his attempted martyrdom. And they called it St. John in honor of the apostle. And then they just told you where it was in the city. St. John, before the Latin Gate. And so that name stuck. That church was built in the 400s, and it still exists today. Wow. We had Mass there just a few months ago, several people in this room. It's 1,600 years old and is still in existence in Rome.
Sweet.
Is it in relation to St. Paul outside the walls?
It is in sort of that section of the city.
Okay.
But not so close.
Okay.
In that same part, yep. In fact, we're pretty sure this is the only St. John before the Latin Gate in the United States of America.
Nice.
Ooh.
Nice.
If somebody listening out there belongs to another one, just keep quiet.
Don't tell us.
And in honor of St. Paul, one of you lucky people is going to be boiled in oil right after this recording. Right. It's a great honor.
Okay, I don't know where to go with that. I'm going to transition to the topic today, which is going to be virtue.
Talking about virtue.
So virtue is something, like last week, Dave, you and I talked a little bit about, the topic was dating as a Catholic. And whenever you're single, you have to prepare yourself, and habitually prepare yourself to date, and to prepare yourself for courtship.
Yeah.
And what is virtue? But virtue is a habit of the intellect and your physical attributes, the intellect and physical, that govern your passions.
Right. It's not just a choice that you make. Oh, I told the truth one time. That doesn't mean you have the virtue of honesty.
Right.
A virtue is something that flows naturally from a habit that you have formed. It's not just a decision. It's sort of like the opposite of a vice, you know. Something that you
It's exactly the opposite of a vice.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of vices out there, and so then the reason why virtue is also important is because every man struggles with different vices, and in order to conquer these vices through the grace of God, you need to know what the opposite of that is, which is a specific virtue.
Right.
So whether it's lust and chastity, or anger and meekness, or there's all different kinds. So you need to know what these other virtues are in order to help conquer these vices.
So I was wondering the other day, this is why I was very excited about this topic. What makes something a virtue? Is practice a virtue? Like, can you have the virtue of practice? What about determination? Is determination a virtue? I mean, these things are good things, but does that make them virtues? So, Father, you kind of told me the other day that virtues are one of your favorite things to study intellectually, and practicing is like a whole different thing. But but so I want to put that question to you. What makes something a virtue as opposed to just a good thing to do? Yeah.
No, it's an excellent question. And you're right. This is one of my favorite topics. Whether I communicate it well or whether I understand it well is another issue. But I do love studying the virtues, especially as set forth by Aristotle 3 centuries before Christ, and particularly with St. Thomas Aquinas about 8 centuries ago. To answer your question about something like determination, the answer is no, it's not a virtue, because you can be determined to be an absolute killer.
I see.
And so a virtue is always, always, always a good. It is a disposition inside of you that moves you towards what is good for you. So tolerance is a hot topic today.
Right.
Is tolerance itself a virtue? No. It depends absolutely what you're tolerant
G.K.
to.
Chesterton would say absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Because you could be tolerant towards sin, and that's a vice.
And that's a vice, yeah. And so it depends. Is just any sort of habit a virtue? The answer is no. Most habits are morally, what's the word I'm looking for here? Neutral.
Oh, okay.
Agnostic.
But if the habit moves you towards your ultimate end, namely and ultimately God, then that is considered a virtue. If the habit moves you away from God, away from your desired end, or an end that's good for you, that's called a vice. So there's no such thing as a bad virtue. Those are two.
They're contradictory.
They're contradictory terms. That's a square circle.
You know, we're all about moderation. Is it possible to have too much of any specific virtue?
It's possible to have too much of most virtues.
Okay.
The exceptions are, and there are only 3 exceptions. You cannot have too much faith,
Okay.
hope, or love. Those are the 3 virtues you're allowed to be as extreme as you want.
But you can never get enough.
Because you can never get enough
Unless
of
you're in
those.
heaven.
You cannot love God too much.
Right.
You
Unless
cannot
you're
hope for heaven enough.
Yeah.
But you can be overly patient, for example. Patience is a good thing, but at a certain point, it switches to becoming, you're no longer patient, you're no longer doing a good thing, now you're being rolled over, or now you're being something else.
You can become scrupulous as well.
Yeah.
To the point of
Yeah,
scrupulosity.
exactly.
So,
exactly.
So how do you know if you're doing that? Is there a virtue among the virtues that, is sort of like the signature virtue to help? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
Good.
I think
Good.
Glad you
Because that would have been awkward if you'd have said no.
there's a virtue that stands, not counting the theological virtues. Those are strictly Christian, faith, hope, and love. But there is a virtue that stands sort of at the top of the list that commands. It's often called the charioteer of virtues, meaning it's the one that guides the horses. It's the one that pulls back. It's the one that determines. It's a thinking virtue. It's in the intellect, not the will. It's in the intellect.
It sounds manly.
And it is prudence.
One of the cardinal virtues.
One of the cardinal virtues. Yes, prudence. And that's the one that says you need to be courageous at this point, and then puts courage into action. You need to be patient with your child here, and then keeps you from slapping them in the face. That's the virtue. That's sort of the commander-in-chief of the other ones that are at their disposal.
I have a toddler at home right now, so one of the books we're reading.
No, she's not home right now.
Well, okay. In my life right now, I have a toddler. One of the books we're reading is Prudence Goes Potty. And
books priest will never read.
It's phenomenal. It's a great book. I highly recommend it to all of our readers, especially if you have a 2-year-old. Okay, but that's good. And I don't ever hear anybody talk about prudence. You hear people talk about courage, faithfulness. There's a lot of virtues that still come up day-to-day conversations. But I don't ever hear talk about prudence.
Prudence is awesome. Prudence is the one that says, it's your thinking virtue, right? It's the one that says, okay, I would like to get from A to B. B is a good spot for me, okay? So now B is not drunk in a bar. B is not leaving my wife to be with somebody else. B is something good for you, something godly. Then Prudence says, these are the practical, individual, small steps to get to B. It's a very hands-on virtue. We talked about earlier about some of this, about what, pick a, not just a large battle that maybe you're not developed enough for to conquer, but maybe choose a small battle and build up some momentum over time until eventually you are developed enough to take on something larger. Okay, that's a prudential act. That's going to take courage, no doubt about it. That's going to take patience, But that is it. That's prudence at work, laying out the plan that works and that moves you towards ultimately God.
So that's like St. Teresa who said, all right, I believe that's what she said, like if you can be trusted in small things, you'll be able to be trusted in big things.
Right.
Was that her, St. Teresa?
I'm pretty sure that was Jesus in the Bible, in that parable with the man and the coins.
Yes.
So she was probably quoting Jesus.
She was probably quoting
I do that a lot too.
Quote Jesus?
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Mother Teresa and I have that in common.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. That's one thing you have in common?
Well, just one among many things.
Okay. All right. Well, when we get back, we're going to continue this conversation in virtue. I'm Adam Minahan, sitting here with David Niles, with our special guest, Father Michael Pratt, here with about 60 other men in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. We are on the Lord's team,
The winning side.
so raise your glass.
Back.
Oh, you were too early.
Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show, segment number 4, episode 48. We're getting close to our 1-year anniversary.
Yeah.
It's very
Pumped.
exciting. We are here in Bartlesville, Oklahoma.
Dude, you know what I just realized? By the time this episode airs, I'll have my new baby girl here.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
Monday.
Monday, little Anna Faustina makes an appearance to the world.
Monday. So
Congratulations.
good to me Monday.
Yeah, I can't wait.
That is going to be, dude, you're hopeless. Like,
Well, I have 2 boys right now, so the girl will definitely
you're
be.
just going to be I'm going to enjoy this. This is going to be fun. You're going to be a huge softie. You think you're tough now.
Okay, well, we're talking about virtue. We're talking about virtue is what we're talking about. Okay, so
So one thing I wanted to mention, our phrase that we say,
Okay.
we're on the Lord's team, the winning side, so raise your glass.
that's
a quote from Pope Benedict.
the 16th,
Yeah, currently still living. So that's why we say it, because it's his quote. And it
and it fits perfect.
works great for our show.
Yeah,
So I just thought you guys would like that.
that's why we do it.
So we raise our glass for that.
Okay,
reason.
so yeah, we can clap to that. Yeah, let's clap for that.
What about this? What if this happens? You know, someday Pope Francis will die. What if Pope Benedict is still alive and he gets elected again as Pope? Like, wouldn't that be crazy? Would he have to take a new name?
I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah, Pope Benedict the 17th, 16th,
Right?
17th.
Can it be the 16th and the 17th?
16.5? No. Okay, so
That would be really funny.
we're digressing. Father, here's something that I want to talk about is we're talking about virtue, and so justice and the virtue of justice. There's sub-virtues. So this is just something that I was thinking about. So this is not what the Catholic Church teaches, but I wanted to see what your thoughts were. So there's virtue. The sub-virtue of justice is religion.
Well, religion is a sub-virtue of justice.
Yes.
Okay,
There
and then
are
the
a
sub-virtue.
couple other sub-virtues of justice, too.
Okay, and so there's another sub-virtue of religion that goes to prayer, and then sub-virtue of prayer maybe to mortification, and through the sub-virtue of maybe.
Is this your idea, or
This is just what I was thinking as I was driving over
Are these
here.
real things, or this is what you're?
No, he's following a train. This is
Okay.
This is
for the
what
most
I was
part real.
thinking as I was driving over here.
Okay.
Through sacrifice and mortification, and then through the sub-virtue of sacrifice and mortification, you get to the act of pure charity, which is willing the good of another. Thoughts? Comments? Am I wrong?
Yeah, we need a book to talk about that, but you're exactly right. So the train of thought would be this: of the 4 cardinal virtues, which is prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. Fortitude is a rough translation would be courage. Temperance, a rough translation, would be moderation. Though both those original words are much more richer and entail more. Of those 4, 3 of them deal with you yourself personally. So prudence is your thinking. Courage has to do with your ability to face difficult tasks. Moderation is or temperance is your ability to be appropriate with your physical pleasures, eating and drinking, sexual relations, and stuff like that. One of those 4 deals with your relationship with others, and that's justice. That's the one that governs my relationship with you. So 3 of them are for me, 1 of them are for you. And justice is all about giving the other person what is their due. And that can take 100 different forms depending on the person. So I owe my father, for example, a particular kind of respect that I do not owe you, who are just my friend.
Right.
That if I buy something, if I buy a car, I owe that person a certain amount of money. If I belong to the state, I owe the state a portion of taxes, etc. So the version of religion has to do with our relationship with God. So justice is the category of my right relationship with somebody else. Underneath that is my relationship with God, principally. That's kind of the subcategory here. And then underneath that category of religion, which is me dedicating all my actions to God, there's another subcategory of one of those actions related to God is prayer. And I have a certain relationship with God through prayer that is governed by justice, that is governed by what I owe him and also what I need from him. And some aids to my prayer can be the topic of mortification. And so that creates another subcategory. And so the virtues, there's this wonderful, beautiful web that has taken place that each of it has its own logical place. It's not something made up. It's something that exists out there somewhere that is in our best interest to cultivate.
So it kind of reminds me of a tree almost. It's like that the fruit of all of these virtues takes on a more real form as you go into each more subcategory, so to speak, because it's a more literal, specific type of the broader virtue.
And so that's why prayer is an act of justice, right? It's because you owe that to God. God is your creator, and because he is your creator, you owe him what is due to him, which is a relationship with him, and that's what prayer is a relationship with God. And so that's why every day you owe him prayer, which is a relationship with him, a conversation with him.
So earlier we were talking about confession and things to bring up in confession. Is it fair that failing to pray one day, I forgot to pray yesterday, is that something that is worth bringing up in confession? Is that a confessable thing? I mean, I know there's not like a threshold. It's like, don't confess that, but...
Yeah, I mean, and what you want to do is look at the individual reasons why. So I didn't pray on Tuesday. Why? The big question is the motivation behind it. Why did I not pray? Well, I was in a car accident the day before and I was in coma, okay? So no, you don't have to confess that.
Right.
If, however, you didn't pray on Tuesday, but you did watch TV for 4 hours, and you did go to the bar and talk to your buddies for 2 hours.
Were you following me on Tuesday?
I saw you at Kilkenny's, didn't I? But if the reason why, if you have chosen something smaller and less important over the most important thing in the world, which is our relationship with God, then that's worth confessing. Not that we have to spend every waking moment talking to God, but there is a certain
But you want to get to that point.
Respect. Yeah, and that will be in heaven, no doubt about it. We'll be with him face to face. But if you have neglected your spiritual life because of something earthly, if you will, then that is definitely something to bring up in confession.
I liked what you said a minute ago about temperance. People call it moderation today, but temperance is a richer, fuller word for the virtue. I kind of was just thinking about that. Courage is one of my favorite virtues, probably at least to talk about. I don't like to have to, demonstrate courage. That's really hard. Bravery. Is there a something about courage that bravery doesn't, if you use the word bravery, you're missing this element of courage?
Bravery and courage, just at first thought, they seem pretty close.
Right.
They seem really
what
close.
I was thinking. That's why I wanted to ask you.
Nothing comes up, the difference between courage and
I still like
bravery.
the word courage over bravery.
Yeah?
I don't know why. Too. It's just a cooler word, maybe.
Courage, I think, would have at the heart of it core, which means heart. It's like, kind of a hardy thing to do to rush into battle or whatever. But
so, we're talking about, justice, which is religion, prayer, mortification. And I think a lot of times it's tough. Dave, you and I talked about this last episode a little bit about, mortification. It's tough to do, especially during Lent right now, because we're towards the end of Lent. We're kind of gun ho at the very beginning of Lent. We're excited. We're going to get this up. We're going to do this. We're going to make sure we do this. Well, now we're halfway through Lent, or a little bit more than halfway through Lent. We're a little bit more tired. We don't get as much sleep. Work is a little bit more stressful. Home life is a little bit more crazy.
Yeah, a lot of our Lenten fasts.
It's tough to do.
Yeah, it started getting real hard.
It's tough to keep going. And so I read this quote the other day. And I want to share it with you because I want to get your thoughts. But it said, "The love of mortification keeps pace in a soul with the love of mental prayer." The love of mortification keeps pace in a soul with the love of mental prayer.
So the more you love mental prayer, the more you come to love mortification.
Right, and that's what we want, right?
Because is that right?
That's exactly right. Because Jesus, when he was carrying his cross on the way to Calvary, he was embracing that cross, right? You couldn't get that cross off of Jesus' shoulders because he was embracing that cross because he knew what he was doing. He was embracing that. And as men, we're called to, in our family, where there are spiritual leaders, we're called to sacrifice for our families.
Yeah.
And so, it's tough to do. I mean, it's easy to talk about. It's tougher to do. But so one of the things whenever I read that, I was like, man, if I want to love more, if I want to embrace my crosses more, if I want to make sure that this is a true love, it's the way to that avenue is through mental prayer. Thoughts, comments? Am I wrong?
I'm just mentally praying about it right
now.
No, I mean, I think you're exactly right. You were talking earlier about virtue is a habit, right? Habits typically are things that are cultivated over time. You have to practice them. So to get to that ability where you are able to sacrifice for your family and that you like it and that you want to do it and that you're really good at it, like a virtue, you would have the virtue of that, that takes an enormous amount of practice. That's a habit that has to be cultivated. One way to practice that ability to die to myself, tend to get out of bed in the middle of the night, to tend to this child, or sit with him for 3 hours until he falls asleep at 5 a.m., then I got to get up right away and go to work. The way to practice that is through this mortification. That's exactly, nobody mortifies themselves as its own end. It's always geared towards something else. So for example, if you're like, gosh, I'm really selfish with my time, I'm addicted to my own just sort of personal comfort, how do I overcome this addiction to my own personal comfort for the sake of something higher and more noble?
We're running out of time.
We're at it. Stay tuned. You have to find that answer.
Yeah, we may write a blog about it. But I do want to thank Father Michael Pratt for inviting us out here. Thank you, gentlemen, for entertaining us.
You've been a wonderful audience.
Yes. We are on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass.
Cheers to Jesus.